Do we see Merkel anywhere? That could be changing. Merkel maybe would have been in a different position. She would have been in a position there.
Have they done the photograph?
I think they did the photograph.
Yeah,
I don't
It's a scramble.
They did not wave.
Table.
You were right.
Nobody
waved.
Yes, because everyone's a grown-up, and it's all about the group as opposed to the individual.
That was a split-second photo op, wasn't it?
Did it? And they didn't dress up in the clothing of the host country as they used to.
And this
Remember
is the first...
that?
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
Remember they were all in lederhosen? No, they weren't. No.
I think this is the first time it's in South America. So this is last time it was in Germany, right?
Yes, that's right.
And she was standing next to the host. So I mean that's an important thing right there. So he got his due as well.
If she stands next to the host, that's okay. That's the right protocol.
Can I say one thing? And this is off topic from Russia and from Saudi situation. Is this hoo-ha over, I just said hoo-ha, over Sandberg and the opposition research that she supposedly knew about related to
George Soros?
To George Soros. Look, the idea that somehow she's the only person who's ever conducted in a commercial sector, conducted opposition research. This is coming from somebody. I run a company that does a lot of commercial information gathering, commercial intelligence gathering. So the idea that somehow she's going to be pilloried for being involved in open source commercial research on another company. Let's take a look at Soros and all the times that he's conducted this sort of research and more on his personal targets. I mean, this is ridiculous, but this is where we are now. If that was done on the Koch brothers, if she had wanted to read that information, I guarantee you nobody would be up in arms right now.
They'd be cheering her along. That's true.
Right.
By the way, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders has just released a statement on the cancelled meeting with Russia's Putin. I'm going to quote it for you. The Russian witch hunt hoax, which is hopefully now nearing an end, is doing very well. Unfortunately, it probably does undermine our relationship with Russia. That's an interesting angle on the cancellation of the meeting. Nothing to do with Ukraine, Crimea, everything to do with the hoax. I'm going to keep reading here because there's more to it. However, and this is again from Sarah Sanders, the statement. However, the reason for our cancelled meeting is Ukraine. Okay, thank you. Hopefully, that will be resolved soon so that productive conversations can begin.
Their messaging is not.
That's a little indirect.
But it's never been disciplined. It's never been consistent. They create a lot of this noise on their very own. A lot of self-inflicted wounds in the way that they put out their messaging. I don't understand it. I have a lot of respect for Sarah Sanders and some of the other folks that are working in that team, but their messaging is always a little off.
It kind of went off on a tangent there, didn't it? Mixing the Mueller probe and Russia with Ukraine and Crimea. What fascinates me is the Saudis. That is not the Crown Prince who you're seeing there, but the Crown Prince is there. And I think there's some scurrying around by all the world leaders not to be with him. I think that's the case.
Yeah, I think that we're all advised by their handlers and their seconds, to try to avoid a photo situation where you're standing next to him in any capacity. Again, what happened to Khashoggi? Terrible, awful, never should happen. There's got to be punitive measures taken. But look, the Saudis have been engaged in questionable and devious behavior over the years against activists and others, and there was little to no outrage over that from either large swaths of the press or folks up on Capitol Hill. The Khashoggi killing was obviously, I mean, it's in your face and the coverage of it. But part of that I can't help believe is politically driven because of the current administration.
Well, you simply cannot break up the alliance of America, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, frankly, against Iran. You don't break that up, no matter what happens. No. You don't break that up. It's far more important, this dance of diplomacy.
Absolutely, and we don't always agree with what they do. Sometimes they work at cross purposes with us, but again, we live in the real world, and you cannot compare a pushback of Putin with the fact that somehow we have to maintain relations with the Crown Prince.
That's Turkey's Erdogan on the right of your screen. That's Treasury Secretary Mnuchin. That's the president's daughter right there. Xi Jinping is talking to I don't know who. He has his back to us.
Singaporean president.
The Singaporean Prime Minister, right? That's right there. You're going to see a lot of interaction between the world leaders as they shuffle around to take their places around the great conference table there. I've not seen President Trump talk to either Putin or Xi Jinping or Theresa May or Angela Merkel. I may have missed it. It may have been on. May have missed it, but I've not seen it thus far. What do you got to say?
Well, you know, this is like a dinner, right? Everybody's networking, minus the cocktails. I believe that I saw that Putin was actually seated. His seat is next to the Crown Prince.
Correct, MBS.
So those are going to be shots of Putin. He was laughing with MBS. That shot will exist. I don't know if the table is set when it comes to being alphabetical, which would explain that seating perhaps a little bit. But I don't think Mr. Putin and the Crown Prince clearly are in their own isolated little block.
Well, he's an opportunist. Putin is an opportunist. And if he sees any sort of wedge between us and Saudi Arabia, whether it's Congress pushing back now on U.S. support of the conflict in Yemen, which, again, has been going on for 4 years. It's not something that just popped up. Then Putin will be looking at it in a way, how does this benefit me?
But
what can I do?
There's also, I think, a Russia-Lincoln interest in what's happening in Yemen. Obviously, Yemen destabilized, obviously, via the Houthi rebels, which are a squad of Iran, right at the southern border of Saudi Arabia. Iran and Saudi Arabia, eternal enemies. And Russia, of course, with its link with Iran. So there's an interest in destabilizing Saudi Arabia for both what's happening at the southern border with Yemen, as well as when they anticipate, of course, any attacks against Israel, and the fact that Saudi Arabia has obviously now made gestures and efforts to have that relationship. So that's what's going on when it comes to destabilizing Saudi as well, and Russia's interest in that.
I don't know how many G7, G5, G10, G20 meetings that we've covered on this program and in my career in television, but I've never found one as interesting as this. Look, I find it fascinating to see these world leaders chit-chatting, getting together, because there are issues amongst all of them. And America has issues with every single one of the major players around that table. Yeah, every single one of them.
When was the last time anybody was really particularly excited about a G20? I mean, it just never happened.
It's so true.
Yeah. So
we used to cover them because we had to. We're in the news business. They're there. You got to cover it. Now we're covering it because we want to. And something interesting is going to come out of it. It already has, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, this is the action that America is liking, that Donald Trump brings to every stage. A lot of people are not used to action, and so it can be somewhat disruptive. But we're finding, and the world is finding, that, wait, this has been good. This is this new experience. A lot of new young leaders aren't used to action and the American sensibility, and it's been good for them. They might not like to admit it. A lot of people don't, like children, like to admit when daddy is correct. But this is what's happening. Adults are now at the G20, and it's a good thing.
But we don't have to call him daddy, do we?
Oh, sure, why not? You can if you want.
I got to, as a newly minted American citizen, I've been a citizen for 2 years. This is my country, and I absolutely love to see my president striding across the world stage, people paying attention to him because he's got the power, the man's got the juice, and things are changing, and he's changing things.
For the better, and this is what we saw with the previous administration. Yes, there was change, and it wasn't really good. And now there is change, and you always want to ask, yes, action is good. Is the action going to be beneficial? Does it help everyone? Are all boats lifted? And not only here at home are all boats lifted, but the problems around the world are the problems that within the resistance of this change, right? The European dynamic with socialism in their economy.
Well,